Amitabh Bachchan, his transformation into what your book calls the middle-aged angry man, as opposed to
Yeah.
Javed Akhtar's, angry young man. How did that happen? Your relationship with Amitabh, you knew him quite intimately at one point. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I knew Amitabh at various points in his career. I talk about the India Today story. We did a cover story on him for India Today at a time when Amitabh had banned the press, so certainly wasn't giving any interviews. And he offered us unparalleled access. I said to him, we'll only do it if I can spend a week or 10 days with you. So I would turn up in the morning when he was waiting in his van for the other stars to turn up. And I would stay with him till he went home in the evenings. And if he wasn't shooting, which wasn't very often, and he was at home, I would go to his house to Pratiksha and spend time with him. So my theory then was that because you interview Amitabh Bachchan and you get nothing except for these famous one-liners and grunts and hmms, I would spend time with him and see him when he couldn't possibly acting, when he was on the sets, when he was doing things, and get a better story out of him. And for reasons that are not clear to me, he agreed. He gave me sort of unprecedented access. But even then, he was acting. I remember he was shooting for a film, I think it was called Namak Halal. And there's one drunken song, and he was shooting it in State Studios, which was the only air-conditioned studio in Bombay at the time. And he was the kind of guy you don't initiate a conversation with. To sit with him and for 1 hour with nobody saying anything is normal. He's very happy being quiet, and you just have to learn to appreciate his quietude, for want of a better term. And he went on to the set after having sort of sat quietly with me for an hour, and he saw the cameraman, he laughed with him, he saw Spot Boy and he remembered his name, he saw the assistant director and he playfully punched him in the stomach, and he was the life and soul of that set. He did the shot, he came back to his dressing room, and again he lapsed into this moody silence. So next time when he was less silent, in a slightly better mood, I said to him, I said, what was all that about yesterday? You were just so quiet in the dressing room, but when you went onto the set, you were a different person. And he said, yeah, that's the real acting. So I think even then, there was a sense in which he was different with different people. And if he felt he had to be Amitabh Bachchan to put on a performance, to make everyone on the set feel comfortable, he was quite happy to do it. But the real Amitabh Bachchan is, I think, and it's not an act and it's not acting, he's a very silent man who, left to himself, would say nothing.
You write about how it was a colossal mistake, his joining politics, and of course the scrutiny that follows in the wake of the Bofors scandal kind of taps into that cynicism in him. Since you have known both protagonists, the Gandhi family and Bachchan, do you think we'll ever know what actually went wrong between them? And why do you think it was a gigantic mistake for him to have joined politics?
Well, he knew nothing about politics. You can join politics because you think you're cut out for politics. You think you can make a difference. I mean, there are many, many reasons for joining politics. But here are two which are not, I think, good enough reasons for joining politics. One is your best friend said to you, I need you, so he joined politics. The other one,
Best friend being
best friend
Rajiv in
being
this case.
Rajiv Gandhi, who had suffered this great loss. His mother had been assassinated, and said to Amitabh, I need you to join politics. I need you to help me. I mean, it's not a good reason for joining politics. The second was that in 1982, you're probably too young to remember this, Barkha, he suffered a near fatal accident. And while he hovered,
On the sets of Coolie, yeah.
oh, good, you do remember. And
I
he
mean,
was
I
a
read, I read. I
yeah,
must have been whatever,
okay,
12
okay.
years
So
old then, or
he was
whatever,
at
11.
BCP
Yeah.
hospital. And he hovered, I think, for at least a month till he was out of danger, possibly longer, between life and death. And India went crazy. I mean, the whole country came to a standstill. People did pujas, crowds gathered around. It was as though a national tragedy was about to occur. And the country felt that through the power of prayer, we could avoid or avert that tragedy, which unfortunately we did, I suppose. I think that left a very deep impression on him, because when you're a movie star, you don't actually meet that many people. When you're Amitabh Bachchan, you don't meet anyone. So you have really no idea of what the people out there feel. You know, some movies are hits, you know, some movies are flops. You know that when you go out, you're mobbed, but then all stars are mobbed. So you don't realize the depth of people's commitment to you, the depth of their love. What he insists on calling the 1982 episode, I think reminded him of that. And he felt internally, I mean, it's almost a cliche, but he genuinely felt that he had got so much love from the people of India, he needed to give something back. Now, I have no problem with that. But there are other ways of giving back. It wasn't a good enough reason for joining politics.
What happened? What went wrong for him? I mean, Bofors happened, yes, but you
But
didn't
also
answer my.
later, things had gone badly wrong before that, because he didn't choose the standard route, which would have been to say join the Rajya Sabha, become an MP in Delhi, stay there. He went back to Allahabad and he stood from there. And of course, he won by a landslide, defeating H.N. Bahuguna. But he didn't realize it wasn't as simple as he thought, that I go to Allahabad, I stand for elections, and I help the people, which was his view of Indian politics. It wasn't like that, because Allahabad was VP Singh's base. And VP Singh was not keen on having Rajiv Gandhi's best friend and probably the most popular person in the country at the time as his political rival. And they did various things to disrupt, if not demolish, Amitabh Bachchan's career. If he used to keep going back regularly, and frankly, during the subject, he was a bore, because he'd only talk about Allahabad and what he had done and how much he cared for people. And yet, within Allahabad, within the Congress, all kinds of plots were being hatched against him. If he didn't go to the constituency for 2 weeks, they would put up posters saying missing, offering a reward for finding this man, etc. He didn't know how to take it. And I don't think, I mean, the film industry is not a place full of really upfront people, but the film industry's duplicity pales in comparison to the duplicity in politics, because he would go and meet VP Singh and he would say, look, this terrible thing has happened, that has happened. And VP Singh would be so solicitous and would say, I'm very sorry. And Amitabh would say, but can anything be done? And VP Singh would say in that folksy manner of his, well, the toothpaste cannot be put back in the tube, or something equally sort of gibberish like. And Amitabh would come back. And before Bofors or anything happened, I remember talking to him, and he was increasingly frustrated. And he kept saying, I'm doing this off my own bat. I'm spending my own money. Why does nobody appreciate that? And there was another fact. Because he was such a draw, they kept sending him out to campaign for the Congress. And he went, I think it was in Assam, and he campaigned. He made a campaign speech, and he was heading back to his helicopter. A young guy ran after him, and the security tried to push him away, but he managed to give a note to Amitabh. And on the helicopter, Amitabh read the note. And the note said, sir, please don't do this. We love you. We don't love the Congress. Do not make the mistake of becoming the Congress. And I think that hit him quite hard, that politics was not a way of just joining to help people. You were, as much as you were helping people, you were also opposing other political parties. You were asking people who loved you because of your movies to take political sides. And I think that he'd never understood.
What happened, do you think, between him and the Gandhis? In the days when Priyanka Gandhi was more open than I think she is today. In an interview to me, she spoke about how Teji Bachchan, Amitabh's mother, was the one who taught her Hindi. And that was the kind of proximity they have. We reached a point where Sonia Gandhi was widely criticized for applying a technicality to somehow get, she and Jaya Bachchan basically went for each other in parliament, right? So what happened? How did families that were best friends become so hostile, so sort of hating, almost hating each other?
I honestly don't know what the real answer is, but you're right. They were extremely close. When Sonia came to India, and she hadn't yet married Rajiv, and they needed to find some place for her to stay, she stayed with the Bachchans. She tied Rakhis on Amitabh and his brother Ajitabh, alias Bunty. So that's how close the relationship was. Jaya, I know, was very close to Priyanka. Amitabh was very close to Rahul. When the assassination happened and Sonia went through what she has described herself as a very bad phase, Amitabh took the family on holiday. I think they went to an island in Greece or somewhere. He looked after them. So it seemed to me that he had something of a nervous breakdown following Rajiv's assassination, though he doesn't like using the term. So it seemed to me that these were two people who were grieving, and the families were coming together and they would support each other. And then suddenly something went wrong. With the Gandhis and the Bachchans, nobody ever says anything in particular or in public, but you had the sense they weren't meeting that often, etc. And by this stage, Amitabh Bachchan had acquired a spokesman, and that spokesman was Amar Singh, who of course hated the Gandhis. And at any provocation, Amar Singh would put mirchi on the rift and would make statements against the Gandhis. The Gandhis would wonder why Amitabh was doing nothing to control Amar Singh. And the gulf just widened.